Hi, everyone. Welcome to another edition of WCM's Outdoor Hospitality Update. I'm your host, Ben Quickle, with Mike Gast from Hawaii. And he's having the people are still hanging out by their RV behind you, Mike. So it's nice to see they don't change from week to week.
At least they're nice and quiet, Ben.
But we're here from the Glamping Show USA, which is in Aurora, Colorado. And David Korse is here with me, sitting right next to me. So this is the first time that I've ever done like a dual camera thing. So it's kind of a neat experience. There's just tons of people, so you can probably hear the background noise. I guess, how many people are here, David?
We've got about 1,300 plus people registered to attend, and we've got 76 exhibitors with an average of about 3 or 4 people each, so probably over 2,000 people altogether that are in the building.
Yeah, and I mean, when you come into the Glamping Show, for people who haven't been here, there's a registration booth, and there's quite a few people who show up at register day of, and you had quite a line this morning.
It went out the door, but thankfully the weather is spectacular. So 80 degrees and sunny outside, nobody had to get cold or snowed upon. It's been very, very active. We're pretty happy.
Yeah, I mean, when I hear Denver this time of year, I always think snow when I hear Denver, no matter what time of year it is, but there's no snow, so that's good.
It is good.
But and the expo hall is just, I went through it earlier, and you have 70 plus vendors in there, and then you have dozens of accommodation units outside. I mean, from bell tents to canvas wagons to, I mean, it's just crazy what you got out there.
Yeah, it's we have more than 40 different structures outside. And as you say, from tents to cabins to yurts to teepees, covered wagons, geodesic domes. We have 5 restored, historically accurate vintage trailers from 1946 Sparta that's been all shared out and looks like $1 billion. So it's just a full gamut of options for people to think about as structures to use for glamping.
Yeah, and then the people from Honey Trek about their camper, which is almost vintage too, that Toyota truck camper they have.
It's true. It's hard to believe they've been on their honeymoon for 10 years now.
I don't. It's just that's a kind of a neat little unit too as well. So I don't know how they keep that thing going.
Spit and everywhere I spit.
So, yeah, so I with Scott Cory from Ventura Ranch KOA is also here with us. Hi, Scott.
Hello. Thank you for inviting me.
Yeah, how's the weather in California, Scott?
It's a beautiful 85 degrees. So perfect glamping weather.
Well, I know we wanted to talk a little bit about glamping and obviously being at the Glamping Show. And I guess, David, I just wanted to start with you. I guess, what are your vibes on the industry? I mean, just being at the show, it seems like it's going really strong. There's a lot of newbies here, too.
Yeah, I think it's probably the same thing that Scott's experiencing with people who want to come out and visit him. On the visitor, the consumer side, people are looking for a positive alternative to be someplace that's 85 degrees and beautiful and a wonderful environment with things to do and the luxury and we want to stay there but have the value of the outdoors, and it's just a better, healthier thing to think about doing. And post-pandemic, one of the things that seems to be happening is that people are kind of reassessing their lives a little bit, deciding how much they want to be kind of in the day-to-day rat race and spend time in traffic and punching a clock and having to work weekends, and are thinking about other things they can do that will let them live a more holistic sort of life and still have a business.
Yeah.
And glamping seems to be very, very appealing. And you're right, the percentage of people that are here that are either new or thinking about it or in the process of doing the due diligence, or some portion is much higher than it has been in the past. So it seems like the interest is peaking on the industry side, from Scott's side of it, as a site developer and owner. Most of the manufacturers are telling us that if you order something today, it may be 6, 9, or 12 months before you can even get it.
Yeah.
Because they're so backed up. And the supply chain is not helping anything.
No, I think I talked with a number of vendors today, and they, if they're shipping anything from overseas, it's not happening very quickly. So,
So David, I got a question for you, David.
Yep.
You know, glamping wasn't even a word 15 years ago. We didn't even know what glamping was. And now that it's become such an established thing, I think the definition of it is still so broad. How does your show see the definition of camping? Is it one type unit someplace all the way up to a pause up type experience where you've got butlers and food services? And so how big a swath does glamping cut?
Probably a bigger one than everybody would like, and Scott can probably talk about this better than I can. But I think if we could come up with a way of saying this is 25 words or less, I can make a lot more money by selling the definition. I think, from my point of view, if I can go someplace, I don't need a recreational vehicle. I don't need a sleeping bag or a tent or any of my own stuff. I can just show up and experience an outdoor tourism experience, really. We use the word experience twice there, I'm sorry. I can have this experience where someone gives me a place to live that's nice or spectacular in an environment that's nice or spectacular, and all I have to do is show up. To me, that's glamorous camping. I don't have a sleeping bag anymore, don't have a tent, and I don't have an RV, but I have the willingness to go out and go on one of Scott's zip lines and stay in one of his covered wagons and have a fabulous time.
Yeah.
You know, it's interesting. This last weekend, we had 45 people from celebrating high school reunion. They were all 65 years old. And the big talk about the whole group is doing this outside is we were glamping and we're 65. And they loved being outdoors. They loved doing things together. They said it was the best experience they've ever had in all the years of having reunions was doing it outdoors in the glamping experience.
Yeah. And it's, I think from what we're seeing here, it's amazing how many different ways people are trying to do glamping. And I know like the North American version had Europe, I think we're a little way behind on how Europe is the glamping. I mean, just people are, I mean, they're in and out, what they're
Ben, you're breaking up really bad now.
Okay.
So Scott, I was going to mention that David Korse's organization, Glamping Business Americas, also has a publication that they do, a digital publication that just came out. They have a show issue out this year, and one of the things that I was able to do was write a story for that publication. On page 48 of that digital publication is a story that includes your campground at Ventura Ranch.
Yes, I absolutely saw that.
Hey Ben, could you just mute? Could you mute while? There we go. So Scott, again, you're featured on page 48 of the Glamping Business America's magazine, which is available on their website for anybody to take a look at. And we talked about what you've gone through since 2017 from the fire that just devastated right over the campground. You lost how many structures?
26 structures.
26 structures, and you I think you were working with CAVCO to come back from that as fast as you can. And again, the story details this, but it was kind of your second run at glamping, because you had a campground that was a glamping campground before the Thomas fire in 2017.
Yes. So, and that's true. And what it allowed us to do is come back bigger and bolder as a glamping campground. Our deluxe cabins, we realized what the glamping guest would really like to have. So CAVCO was awesome in helping us build those deluxe cabins to fit that parameter. We came back with the Conestoga wagons, with teepees. We tried different things to see what the guests want. And even with the group I talked about that just had their 65-year reunion, 50-year reunion, but 65 years old, they all work in teepees and the wagons as well as the deluxe cabins. So it was, they had the ability to pick the type of glamping accommodation that fit them the best and their budget also.
And that's interesting, because what David was just talking before about what it what the definition is, and it's so broad, that it can be just a unit on somebody's private land, all the way up to these fantastic resorts that we're seeing popping up in the last few years. There's a lot of campground owners out there that are probably thinking about getting into the glamping business, but how do they know what's right for them? How do you determine? Yeah.
Oh, 1 second. We have to say goodbye to David. I think he has to get going though.
Oh, okay.
Thanks so much for being with us, David.
Thank you, David.
I'm sorry to have to leave so soon. Scott, I still want to see you face to face. We live 20 minutes from each other, so we'll get this done. Thanks, guys.
Yeah, thanks, David.
Thank you, David.
Thank you, David.
No, that's
Okay, now we'll see if Ben can get his headset on.
I'll go get my headset on. So.
All right. Okay, so Scott, we were talking about what should a campground owner, even a small guy, be thinking about when he's thinking about glamping?
I think you have to look at what you have around you. And what I mean by that, if you take like under canvas and they're set up by all the national parks, everybody's going to be gone during the day and they're just coming there at nighttime and experience the glamping portion then. With most campgrounds, like my campground, we don't have any attractions nearby. So you actually, to be successful, you need to make the attractions at your property. And what we found to make our glamping successful, we added zip lines and rope courses, jumping pillows, gym mining, all these different things. So the modern glamper wants something to do. They don't want to just sit around like an RV person might do. They really want to be active, and they want friends to come with them too.
And depending on your location, providing food service might not have to be a requirement, correct?
Might not have to be, especially if you go the deluxe cabin route where they have the kitchens, the refrigerators and the microwaves and the stoves all in one unit. Makes it very easy.
So let's talk a little bit about what's different about a glamping customer. I know a lot of campground owners, they're very familiar with what a tenter looks like and behaves, and the same with your typical RVer. But a glamping customer is probably not very experienced with that outdoor experience you're going to provide them. So it's a different market, and you got to be prepared for that, right?
Not only prepared, but you also have to know the psyche of that customer. What I mean is they're not used to having constraints for noise or what time they have to be a little more quiet. That's probably number one. I'd say the second thing we need to think about with that type of guest is they're not used to the great outdoors. Between little bugs that might be on the outside and so forth like that, they're not used to dealing with that. So we have to help educate them what the great outdoors has for them and what they need to bring with them. Flashlights, for instance.
Mm-hmm. So how does the typical glamping guest and the typical campground guest, camper guest, how do they mix?
So we knew better to have a mix all together. So we have the RV section a little more separate from, I call it the glamping section. But what's interesting, we're seeing more and more of the guests that are traveling together, meaning the glamping guest will bring his RV, but his friends will stay in the cabins. And we're seeing more and more of that than we ever have. And we need to start allowing, setting sites up so they can be closer together and they can meet in a special spot where they can have a campfire together.
Welcome back, Ben. Are you there?
Yeah, I'm here. Can you guys hear me?
Yeah, it's much better.
Yes.
Yeah, the view's better too behind me. So we just moved a little bit. I had to go back and get my headset. So, but I've been listening to you guys talk for a while. So, I guess, Scott, one of the questions I had was, I get a lot of campground owners that are trying to implement glamping into a traditional campground, kind of like what you've done. I guess, how difficult was it for you to separate glamping from what you do for RV sites?
But, it wasn't that difficult. And the reason why I say that, it was a mindset that I wanted to do it. That was the tough part. Once I decided to do it, we just started taking sections of the campground and decided what that will become, whether it's going to be teepees. Teepee has its own section. The deluxe cabins, it has their own sections. Our safari tents have their own sections. And that's how we did it. And it became very successful that way.
On the, when
Ben,
we talk,
Ben, it might be good for you to throw up a link to Scott's website too at some point, even after the show, just so people can go and visit and get a little bit of a view for what's going on there, because it's quite extensive. When you think that this place was completely burned over 4 years ago, and brought back with all new structures, all new facilities. It's quite stunning to see that, and you just don't expect it to be the site of a devastating fire the way it looks now.
Yeah, and I guess, is there any thought to, building these canvas, the teepees and stuff in an area that could get wildfires, I guess? Is that something that concerned you, Scott, when you were going into this?
No, it's not going to be any different than the deluxe cabins. If you have a fire, and ours was about 1,500 degrees, it's taking everything down, whether it's canvas or wood structure or metal. Our laundromat, our coins all melted together. So it really didn't matter. And Ben, one of the things I'd like to recommend to fellow campground owners, if you decide to go into glamping, don't just put one unit of this and one unit of that. Go into the business. If you're going to do teepees, start with 3 teepees or 4 teepees. If you're going to do safari tents, the same thing. Don't put 1 or 2. You're not in the business. Make it your business. Once you make that decision, that's what I was talking about, mindset. Once you decide, then make it happen. Start with 1 category if you have to reduce your budget, but do a couple different categories would be best.
What's that do to your staffing, Scott? Is running a glamping operation a lot more complicated than running a typical campground?
It is, because all of a sudden you're in the housekeeping business, right? You're really in the hospitality business. And if you don't have food service, you're going to need a store that's going to have a lot of the necessities or amenities that they need to buy that they don't have, like the milk and the flashlights and the things they don't remember to bring because it's their first time. So staffing takes double the amount of staff than running a regular campground. And the guests need more attention. And so it's important to make sure you're planning to have a dramatic increase in your labor costs.
So one of the things I found interesting when we did the story for this month's Glamping America's magazine was that you had some, what did we lose, Scott? There he is. You had some really interesting insurance problems because all your infrastructure right under the ground, your plumbing, your electrical, it melted. It was affected by the fire, and it took a long time for you to do that. So what insurance tips would you give somebody going into glamping?
Okay. Well, for one, we think about, there's not an insurance carrier that I know of that covers below the ground. So, and we did. Our water pipes melted, our electrical melted, our septic systems had problems because of melting, and that's not covered. Now, there's probably a special rider you can buy. I certainly didn't know of it and heard that we needed it. And second, the most important is it's not like a homeowner's insurance. You buy a home for $100,000 and it costs $200,000 to replace the home, and that's adjusted in your policy. On commercial policies, if you paid $100,000 for a cabin, that's all you get, even though it might be $200,000 when you replace it. So be careful and making sure you make adjustments throughout the years to cover the amount of coverage you want to have on your campground.
Now, one of the things before we went on the air today, we had Tim Gage from CAVCO was just stopped by to say hi before we went on the air from the show, and I know that Tim was instrumental in getting you back up on your feet with CAVCO. I think all of your structures are CAVCO products, and obviously they worked really well with you to make some very different models. I mean, you got very involved in the design of what you wanted and customized it to your park. I mean, you've got spiral staircases going up to second deck, viewing decks on top where people can go have breakfast and a glass of wine at night and look over the beautiful valley you've got there. How important is it to be unique? I know that as David was talking earlier, he's got all this stuff there. He's got 40 different things on display outside. There's a lot of very unique things out there, but you've managed to take your stuff, Scott, and kind of make it another twist of unique. So is that unique experience something that the glampers are really after?
My thoughts are, if you have a quality product, you're going to be fine. Some of that is for me. I wanted something to be proud of that I did differently. I wanted to be a leader in the marketplace. The spiral staircase that you bring up, Mike, I had views, and I said, what can we? I actually asked Tim Gage. I said, if you could do one thing for a new product, what would you do that's never been done before? And it was Tim Gage that says, I would love to add a spiral staircase. I said, that would be great at our campground. So together, between engineers and the state agencies, we got together and designed it so it'd be legal and follow all registration criteria.
Wow.
Yeah. I guess from you have the glamping area separated. I guess, what's the service like? Because glamping, part of it's the accommodations, but the other part of it's like the service that the guest expects. I guess, do you guys offer like meals or food or service or do anything like that at your park?
So I wish we did then. To put in food service at our park, we'd have to put a package plan in, which is going to be probably about $1.5 million. So we haven't went that route. We just got approval on putting our new store back in. So we're carrying some of the products they need. So it'll be easy to go back to your cabin or back to your fire pit area and do some of your own glamping cooking.
Okay. And part of what you guys offer, you obviously have the zip line and you're doing some unique kind of amenities. I guess that's part of glamping too, right? Having those kinds of experiences.
Yeah, and the word you said, experiences, is I think so important for glampers. The glamper doesn't want to go to a spot and just sit in front of his safari tent all day. Especially the millennial glamper, they want things to do. They want to make sure hiking trails are nearby or the beach is nearby, and you need to provide those experiences. What can make that person have a memory that lasts with them forever?
So what is it? What has glamping done for your bottom line? Let's talk that, Scott. I think it's. I know we mentioned that glamping isn't your traditional campground customer. So glamping was an entirely new market to get into. You obviously had to take part of your campground that was catering to the traditional camper and turn it into the glamping customer's destination. So has that really panned out financially?
It has. To give you an idea, about 18% of our sites at our campground are dedicated to glamping, which would be the safari tents, deluxe cabins, teepees, that type of idea. But it produces over 50% of our registration revenue. And Ventura Ranch is kind of offset off the freeway a little bit. So you want to have the type of accommodations that they're going to come to, and they're going to stay for at least 2 or 3 days. And I think we've been able to achieve that.
And you can charge quite a bit more for these glamping accommodations than maybe traditional sites or maybe even like a park model, right?
That's right. So to give you an idea, an RV site that maybe is producing $70 a night, well, our glamping part of it is usually about triple that, 2 to 3 times more than what that site used to produce on an income.
And do you utilize like dynamic pricing and stuff at your park where the prices are adjusted depending on demand?
I'm going to say no, not to where I want to. I think with our software, we're probably able to do that easier now. And I expect by 2022, we will be using more of the dynamic pricing models. And it would have added a lot of extra bottom line for us this year. Unfortunately, with COVID, our problem was we didn't know when we could open. We were closed 5.5 months during 2020. So we weren't sure what 2021 was going to bring.
Yeah.
So when you built back better, Scott, after the fire, you added some things that weren't there before. You had, I think you had the teepees in place. You had one safari tent, but you've also added a covered wagon now.
Yeah, so we actually had 4 safari tents at that time, but we added 4 of the Conestoga wagons, are covered wagons. We have those now. And we're just actually having discussion of what we're going to expand for 2022. We're going to expand some more into the glamping area.
It's amazing the number of different structures that people are coming out with now. I mean, here at the Glamping Show, we have the geodesic domes. I mean, I think 2 years ago when I was here, there was like one company with a dome. Now there's like 3 or 4 companies out there with domes. You got the canvas tents. I mean, they're just all over the place. And it's unique that the different ways they build canvas tents. You know, you got the large ones with logs. They're doing those in unique styles. You've got the you know, almost like a traditional camping tent. And then you got the bell tents and you got the wagons. And I mean, it got some really unique, like tiny homes that are covered in canvas, but they're also partially wood built. And it's just amazing, the different structures. And then you got people who just custom build their own units. So it's kind of just crazy what people are coming up with and the creativity they have. So there's definitely a lot of ways that park owners can just, you know, liven up their park, I guess, with these units.
And as you're seeing, as Ben just demonstrated, the word unique comes up a lot in glamping because it's still unique. It's still a very unique thing. Scott, are you starting to see experienced glampers that have been other places and are starting to comparison shop a little bit with what you have?
I'm going to say yes, because they are actually our easiest camper, because they've done it before, they know what to expect, and they're ready just for a new experience at a new location. And I think, everybody is now coining the word glamping. It's 10 years ago, seldom did anybody talk about that word, or 15 years ago. So I'm really excited people are using it and know what it means.
So is glamping something that a campground owner that's not started glamping on their campground yet, should they be afraid of glamping, that they're going to lose market share of their regular campers because of glamping?
No, not at all. Embrace it. Because that is where, as David was talking, the growth taking place in the glamping industry and the new camper. I mean, I see our campground, all the new campers are really in the glamping part of the business. They really want to get outdoors. They've never been outdoors before. So embrace it. Just find an area you can start it that is its own special enclave, that the glampers can be separated a little bit from the RVers.
And is a glamping customer running into the same issues as far as reservations go that RVers are running into? It's just hard to get in. Do they have to start a lot earlier in their planning?
I would say yes, and actually I think we have more demand than what we have sites open for, is the glamping end versus the RV end. And that could be because we have a large amount of RV sites, so that makes it a little easier for an RV to make a reservation. But I think our weekends especially are booked through the end of the year with no openings.
So Ben, a question for you, Ben. Looking behind you at some of the materials you're seeing there at the show, what's surprised you the most at the Glamping America show? What's so new that it took your breath away a little?
I mean, I think you know, most of the vendors that are inside here behind me are, you know, they typically have stuff that I've seen before at other conferences. I go to a lot of conferences, but I think what's really surprised me is just the diversity of the structures that are outside. You know, just some of the stuff people are coming up with. Like I said, there's one unit from a company from Utah or Oregon, one of those 2 states. They brought a wagon. I mean, it looks like a tiny home, but it has like 2 solid walls on the sides, but then it has a canvas shell that goes around it, and it has like a loft inside. And I mean, just some of the things that these companies on the accommodation side are coming up with is just kind of that's what really blows me away. And, you know, we don't have any tree houses here, but, you know, if anybody wants to type in tree houses in a Google bar and look at some of the tree house resorts, I mean, it's just incredible what some of these tree house resorts are doing. I mean, really high, 15, 20 feet up in the air. It's just incredible. So,
Well, I'll ask Scott another question because he's been someplace that I'm familiar with but have never been to, and it kind of illustrates the strength of the glamping industry. Is, you know, a campground, a company like Campgrounds of America that's been around for 56 years, with 520 locations in the traditional camping business. They've been into the glamping mode for a long time with cabins and deluxe cabins and safari tents. But they actually took one of their campgrounds in Bar Harbor, Maine, out of production a couple of years ago, and decided to build a complete tent glamping resort out of it. And so I know, Scott, you just returned from a visit up there. What's that like? You know, what is a total glamping resort look like?
I have to tell you, I had no expectations. And when I arrived, it was 11 p.m. at night, and it was beautiful. The special lodge they had built, which was, you know, probably at least probably $3 or $4 million, gave you the ambiance of what this resort was going to be like. And then we got to our room, our tent, the safari tent, and, you know, at about $350 a night. It was gorgeous. My wife, who has no interest in being in a tent, said, I like this better than some of the hotels we've stayed at. And the relaxed atmosphere, the services inside, from the restroom to the accommodations with the bedding, were over the top gorgeous. The safari tent was large. I would say at least probably 14 to 16 feet wide and probably close to 30 feet long. So it was a big tent and spacious and had a great feel. And it definitely opened my eyes to what the top end of the glamping market does. And the interesting thing was we actually had to take a taxi to get there. No Ubers were available at that late at night. And I said, here's where we're going. She goes, I know exactly where that is. Everybody's been coming here and wanting to stay at Taramore Outdoor Resorts.
Yeah, and Scott pointed out the name that I forgot to mention is Taramore, Terramor. So TaramoreResort.com, it should get you there. And I was involved in some of the PR for that project early on before I retired from KOA. And it's interesting that you call it top end, because I know, talking with Toby O'Rourke, the CEO of KOA, she wouldn't categorize it as top end. She really considers it as a moderate entry point into glamping. And part of the reason for that is because they're on that edge of a national park again, and people are out all day long doing what they do. So it's more about getting them off to the start of their day with a hearty breakfast, and being ready to accept them at night with dinner options and some activities before bedtime. And it's really and something else that I know the marketing people at KOA would point out is they thought they knew what they were going to do with Taramore when they started that up. And I know Whitney Scott, the vice president of marketing at KOA, told me that it was an entirely new learning experience, because it's not like marketing a campground. It's a different audience with a different expectation. It's very much more like you are in the boutique hotel business when you are 100% like that. Did you notice a change in your marketing back at Ventura Ranch that you had to do? Is marketing different at Ventura Ranch than it was before?
Oh, yes, most definitely. In fact, what we're doing on a marketing sense is it's more, how do I want to say, localized. Probably within 100 to 200 miles is where we're pulling most of our glamping customer. They're not flying in to come stay with us. And it makes it easier for us to attract. And that's why we're doing some of the things like zip lines that we'll market to the general public, so they can see that we have glamping, that's where we want them to stay, is when they come to the zip line. We want them to stay in one of our glamping accommodations.
And where does your customer base for glamping come from? Is it close by?
It's close. I would say 200-mile radius is most of our glamping guests.
So glamping really isn't an activity yet for the cross country camper so much. It'd be pretty hard to plan that trip out.
I think maybe that depends on the location though too, because I think like when my wife and I went to the Grand Canyon and we went on our cross country trip in the spring, there were definitely some locations near like Grand Canyon and like Arches that were unique, and I think maybe those areas would get your cross country travelers a little bit more. I don't know.
I think you're right, Ben. I went to 3 national parks this summer, and those are true destinations. And I think glamping locations will survive very well there because that is a very strong destination for people to go to.
What's crazy to me is some of the price points for some of these resorts and the fact that they're booked out. Like when you're looking at places near like Arches National Park, I mean, it's not uncommon to get a canvas. I think when I was looking, it was like $400 or $500 a night, and maybe even more. You look on Airbnb and they've got cottages and different things that are going for a couple $1,000s a night, and to me, that's just incredible how much they're able to charge for these sites, and they're booked. It's not like they're sitting empty. So
it's true. When I went to Taramore, some friends also said, "Hey, I think we'll fly out there too." There was nothing available. And that just shows the strength of what's happening in our glamping industry.
Yeah, I think I was talking to somebody here who had a cottage, and they're making near Yosemite. They're making $35,000 a month from that just one cottage, and it's just incredible. So
that is, and I think if I take a look, I think there's no doubt COVID has helped spur on the glamping part, being in the outdoors, away from the virus, that type of idea. There's no doubt in my mind.
Yeah.
So Scott, how far away from me from the time that a traditional campground is just going to have some sort of a glamping offering, whether that's a deluxe cabin or a safari tent, because the glamping customer is going to start assuming that campgrounds are in the glamping business too. It's just part of the business. Are we 5 years, 10 years? Are we already there that people should have something available for that crowd?
Yeah. I think, from a campground owner's perspective, we're there. We need to be there. And if you're not, you need to seriously be thinking about what it takes to get there. The nice thing with the KOA system, they delineate different types of campgrounds, from the resort to the holiday to the express journey. And that helps, I think, the guest understand what they're getting into. And I would say all the resort KOAs are going to have some type of glamping attached to it. And a lot of the holiday KOAs will have some type of glamping attached to it. But if you're not doing it, I suggest you think about it, because I'm seeing that direction that we're going, it's getting stronger. And if you look back, and this is what I thought way back 10 years ago when I started putting my campground into glamping, then it was 8 million RVs were out there in the marketplace, households that owned them. Of course, now it's a lot more. But there was 35 million households that didn't own an RV, that would like to enjoy the great outdoors. Now, those numbers have probably changed. It's probably, 11 or 12 million RVs in the marketplace. And there's probably 40 million households that never had a chance to get to the outdoors yet. And glamping is the best opportunity, because you provide all the services and amenities that makes their job easy. We actually, one of our coin words are, just bring a toothbrush. That's all you need to go glamping. And then that's how easy it is.
Is glamping also a gateway for some non-traditional camping? I know on the ethnicity side, we're seeing a huge influx of Hispanic campers. I think KOA just put some data out on that today. And but just about across the board, minority camping has really picked up, both in the Asian markets and the African Americans. And so is glamping a way for them to experience the outdoors the way that they want to, in a very comfortable way, and kind of get into the lifestyle?
There's no doubt. In fact, what I'm seeing is from a non-white basis, we're seeing a strong influx into our glamping business at Ventura Ranch. We had a family that came from all over California, a African-American family, and they had a reunion. They didn't want to be stuck in a hotel room or stuck in a banquet room having their reunion, a family reunion. So they came and glamped together, and it was the best experience they could even imagine. And we're seeing that more and more from the non-white families.
Yeah, I think another thing when we look at the Hispanic culture, especially, and the KOA data reflects this, is that they camp in groups, and that's important for park owners to recognize too. And when they go for these glamping adventures or when they go to your park, they're camping in groups, they're bringing more people, and just being able to have like those group sites and amenities and different things is important. So
very true. Very true.
So Scott, you mentioned that there's this tens of millions of folks out there that don't own an RV, don't own camping equipment, but would still want to get outside, especially during this pandemic time. How does a campground owner determine what his market is for glamping?
Oh, that's
a
loaded question. I would say this: if you're in a community, when I say community, at least 100 to 200 mile radius, and you have a lot of millennials that live in these communities, and you have some outdoor experiences you can embark upon, just do it. And if you look across the nation, you're seeing more and more campgrounds carry that product of a glamping accommodation. And just go visit somebody else in your communities that are doing it and see what they're doing. Are they carrying Airstreams? What are they doing, and what is it working? Go visit a couple spots before you attempt it, and you'll get a new idea of what it's about.
I think you could also like survey your campers too, right? Where you're like, if we bring glamping into the park, or what kind of accommodation units would you be interested in staying in? Maybe you could base it off of that, right? Too, or
yes, of course, but they're really thinking, hey, now I can bring some of my children or grandkids, and now they don't have to stay in the RV with me. Right?
Yeah.
So that's what they're thinking about. But I don't think there's probably a community in the United States that can accept glamping and be filled with glamping guests. Mm-hmm. But come back to, Ben, what I want to be careful. If you're not near a national monument or national park, you may need to develop something of why they're going to stay at your park, because they are energetic. They want to do things. They're not there in the RV just to relax. They want to hike, they want to swim, they want to see new points of interest. So make sure, as if you decide to do glamping, that some of those fundamentals you are thinking about and have available for them.
So Scott, I know the KOA is big on surveying folks after the stay, and what kind of marks have you been getting from the glamping crowd?
Those are actually, that's a good point, Mike. Those are our highest marks, actually, is when they stay in one of our accommodations, the safari tents, the deluxe cabins. We get more, without a doubt, it's the highest percentage of top end recommendations we get are from the glampers.
Yeah. I think that's something that we've heard here at the Glamping Show too. When I talk to glamping park owners, the people they have in their glamping accommodation units are always very willing to get on and review them. And, they talk about what they enjoyed about their stay and visit a lot more than maybe typical campground customers. And I know a lot of glamping park owners actually offer a way for people to leave like journals and different things at the glamping sites, which is kind of an interesting thing. It gives customers down the road a chance to read what other people had to say and what they experienced and what they loved about it. So that's kind of unique. So yeah, but I think that's pretty much all the time we had, right, Mike?
Yeah, and I know that Scott's got to go out. He's got a Halloween event to get set up.
We do.
And so more big doings at Ventura Ranch. So I'd really recommend that folks go to the KOA.com website if you'd like, or the link that Ben has put up here to Ventura Ranch, and take a look at some of those facilities, because the photographs are up there and they're beautiful. And also go on to the Glamping Business America's website and download some of their magazines. They're beautiful magazines. I've been lucky enough to write a few articles for them, and they do a wonderful job of covering this fast emerging industry. Obviously, as David Korse said, it's exploding right now with interest, and his show, both the attendance and vendors, is up 200 or 300% from the last time he had this. So obviously it's here to stay. It's something that campground owners should be considering.
Yeah, and it's great to see the show just blow up, kind of. I mean, it's incredible how many people are here, and it'll probably be incredible to see next year how much more it's grown. So it's a pretty exciting time. But thanks, Scott, for coming on, and hopefully I'll see you at the KOA conference here in another month or so.
Yes.
If you get down to Louisiana, so
we'll be there.
All right.
Well,
And then
thank you, Mike. Thank you, Ben.
And then next week we're going to be talking about snowbirds. What's going on in the snowbird market. Are Canadians going to be able to come down? What's that look like? So that should be an interesting discussion. But thanks everyone for taking part today, and we hope you enjoyed the show.
Thanks, guys.
Thank you.